out so I can get service. This is crazy. It's so exhausting. It really is so exhausting to be out here trying to fight for good and the devil be in return. Not getting service is, you know, devil's work. He doesn't want me to spread the truth. He doesn't want me to spread God's word. He doesn't want people to know their rights. He doesn't want people to know the truth. And that's exactly why I have these problems and nobody else does. It's 2025. Nobody else has these technology problems. Just me. Because if they did, they'd complain about it, surely, right? Because that would be logical. Because then we would all know that we have a huge problem and we could fix it. But it's just me that goes through it. Just me. Just like everything else I go through alone. I guess I'm the only one out here actually struggling. So I'm going to go to this different place so that I can get service. I literally spent an hour setting all this up, and then I guess I don't get service. I don't know. This is really dear to my heart because it's very similar as to what happened to me in my case when my daughter was stolen from me and I was marked as a child abuser when actually no child had been abused. It's so common, you know, and people like Amanda Lewis, she needs to be freed. It's really crazy how common sense is not common anymore. People are genuinely getting dumber, and it really shows when we have innocent people like Amanda Lewis in jail. The general public has so much misinformation about the case, they don't even know what's true and what's not. Like I said, I paid for an autopsy report. Public information. So we'll talk about what was in that autopsy along with all of the other evidence to support or defend Amanda, because it's crazy. She was convicted on no evidence. None. There was no evidence to support that she murdered her child. None. Not one lick of evidence to support. Not even the testimony of her 6-year-old son is valid in this case. That's not valid information, especially when this poor child was under duress from the grandparents to make statements because one of the grandparents had raped Amanda. It's crazy. Not to mention this poor child changed his testimony 14 times. Also had special meetings with prosecutors. You know, got to get that story straight. It's really crazy that something like this could even happen when it's not only a violation of her civil rights, but it's ethically wrong to frame a mother for abuse. I mean, it's so wrong. And like I said, the public, the general public, does not even know the actual evidence on this case. They sit there and watch testimony and still will say that this baby had bruising on her face when nurses and doctors testified that there was no bruising on this baby's face. And whether or not there was bruising or not is irrelevant, because CPR and other life-saving measures were performed at the scene of the accident where this baby drowned. These are actually common injuries that we would see from CPR. Broken ribs, a bruised face, bruised ears, bruised neck. Very common with CPR. Bruised chest. Okay? The list goes on. CPR is it's not a beautiful task, okay? It's actually quite violent and aggressive, and it has to be for the purpose of saving lives, okay? You got to be beating the shit out of that heart and breathing the hell into that mouth to expand those lungs. It is not an easy feat. Ask any nurse that has ever worked in the ER, and it is probably one of the most exhausting things that they have to do, is to climb up on a fucking patient and use all of their might to save their life. I don't know if you've ever seen this in real time, but it's actually kind of scary when you're witnessing it, because it's so violent. When that is done to a child, they typically have injuries, okay? It's very common. Sorry, there's a roadblock. Of course there is. What else would be going on? There's so much. So I want to go over the actual evidence. I want to go over why she was convicted. I want to go over why these statements were made by her son. And I want to talk about the history of Adriana and AJ. I'm not saying that Amanda was a perfect mother, because she clearly was struggling. But at the same time, Amanda was the only one that was actively trying to get her kids help. Let me say that again. Amanda was the only one who was active in trying to help her kids. This was testified by the teachers and principals at AJ and Adriana's school. They said that Amanda went above and beyond to try to help her kids. She was an active participant in their education. She was a kind, loving, affectionate parent. This was the testimony of teachers, okay? Because I'm going to trust them over a nurse or a pathologist who has been dishonorably kicked out of the medical field since then. We'll talk about him in a minute. And he's a medical examiner, okay? He's been completely dishonored in the industry. And this was the same medical examiner who originally classified this as an accidental drowning, which was the leading cause of death in Florida at the time, in Estill County. So, in Estill, Florida. The teacher said that Amanda went above and beyond to try to get her children help. First of all, it was only released at trial that Adriana had ADHD. Adriana had everything. She had a neurodevelopmental issue, autism, ADHD. This child was wetting the bed, severe behavioral issues, threatening to kill her brother, threatening to kill the mama, showing her ass anywhere in any way that she could. Amanda was in over her fucking head. And do you think that they tried to help her when she went to social services to get help? When she was being an active parent in her child's life, trying to figure out why her child, Adriana, was having all of these behavioral problems, they had no help for her. That's actually their job. Just for those that don't know, if a single mother or a mother goes to DSS and they're like, listen, I need help, my child is out of control, I don't know what to do, we sign them up for parenting classes. We get them connected with mental health specialists. We give them addiction services if they're struggling with drugs or alcohol, the parent themselves. We have resources that we are supposed to implement to help mothers, but they never use them. Not unless, of course, the mother is under investigation through CPS. Then they'll force them down the mother's throats. By all accounts, other than from prosecutors and Amanda's mother and father, by all other accounts, Amanda was actually an active parent in her child's education and mental health services, and she was going above and beyond to try to get Adriana help. Now, that's the truth. That is what is recorded in court documents. No debating this shit. I'm not going to debate anybody on this shit because I've done two fucking days of research. I went out of my way to pull court files. I went out of my way to watch everything that is accessible on the internet. And I also took advice from clinical psychologists and other doctors who have studied this case religiously. Dr. Grande is one of those people. So if you're interested on his perspective, I wholeheartedly agree with Dr. Grande's perspective on this case. This poor woman was railroaded because of a sex crime. Let me break it down for you. Once again, let's take a gander at this. I want to show you the difference in a guilty mother who kills her children, just their appearance. What's the difference between this, Lori Vallow, who brutally killed her children, and we remember this woman from Detroit. What is going on? Great question. She murdered her kids. Look at that face. Does that look like an innocent mother? Because it doesn't to me. It looks like pretty guilty, right? And what about Miss Lori Vallow smiling in court after she murdered her children? Right? Now look at this face, because that's the face of an innocent person, honey. An innocent person who was doing the best that they could with the cards they had been dealt. Okay? Huge difference in the faces. I just think that common sense goes a long ways, okay? So let's start from the beginning. I want to start with the actual case of Andrea being found dead. So back in 2007, and actually it was 2005, Amanda Lewis and her 2 children moved to Esto, Florida with her boyfriend. This guy named Alan had a 15-year-old son who also lived in the home, and he was actually there the day of the murder. Did you know that? Did you know that there was a 15-year-old boy in the home when this woman allegedly drowned her daughter in the backyard? Yeah, prosecution doesn't want you to know that. So that day that the murder actually happened, it was 6-year-old AJ who would go on to testify against his mother. It was 7-year-old Adriana. It was 28-year-old Amanda, who was the mother. And there was a 15-year-old boy whose name is Alan Jr., who was the son of Amanda's boyfriend, who was actually at work that day. Now, Amanda had been busy that day. She had brought the kids home, and the kids, AJ and Adriana, wanted to swim in the pool. She told them no because she was doing laundry inside of the home. So she proceeds to do her laundry. She's actually on the phone with Alan, and from phone records, we know that at the approximate time that Adriana drowned, she was actually on the phone with Alan. At one point, Amanda peeks her head outside and she sees AJ, but she does not see Adriana. And she asked AJ where Adriana was, and he said over there. 5 minutes later, she comes out of the house and she finds Adriana in the swimming pool. Now, there was a red wagon that had been placed up against the pool. There was no ladder inside of the pool. The ladder was actually stored in a storage shed behind the house because the kids would try to sneak into the pool. There was multiple reports that Adriana was, quote, scared of water. First of all, Adriana was 47 inches tall. The pool was like 37 inches tall. She could stand up in this water if she wanted to. She would have been tall enough for her little head to peek out of the water. That's about 10 inches, 12, something like that. You know what I mean? Second of all, she was eager to swim that day. By all accounts, she actually loved to swim. Her grandmother, who was Brenda, and Chuck, we'll talk about them in a minute because they're the reason that this poor woman was prosecuted. They talk about how the kids loved to swim in the pool, and it was an above ground blue pool that had an inflatable top. I'm sure you've seen them before. You can buy them from Walmart. And Amanda comes running out of the house. She scoops Adriana out of the pool. She puts her on the ground. She immediately starts calling 911. And she had literally just gotten off the phone with Alan a few minutes right before this all happened. Now, Adriana had been in a lot of trouble in school, neurological issues, like I said. We're going to talk about that a little more because I do believe that it was Amanda's fault that her daughter was having all of these issues from the lack of bonding. Amanda actually was in the military, and she was currently a nurse or working at like it was a nursing facility. It was a medical facility that she was working at. This was not a woman that was a fucking bum. This was a woman that was working her ass off trying to take care of these children while also trying to get her daughter help for ADHD, neurological issues, and extreme autism. This child was having extreme behavioral problems, and back in the early 2000s and the 90s, there wasn't, and there's still not, a lot of help available for mothers who were going through this alone. Amanda starts doing CPR on the child, on Adriana. The EMS get there. They life flight Adriana to a hospital, and she is pronounced dead an hour later. Now, I saw the ER nurse that actually spent over an hour trying to resuscitate Adriana. I watched her testify on the stand, and you can tell that it really disturbed this nurse. I mean, it really bothered her that she could not bring Adriana back. However, she did testify that at the time of all of this, she did not witness any bruising on Adriana's face. Very interesting. Because that is one of the circumstantial evidences that the prosecutor will go on to use to try to convict Amanda of drowning her daughter. So once again, drowning was the leading cause of death in children in Florida this year and previous years. They lost more children to accidental drownings, and we still do, than any other incidents. Children somehow sneak outside. Typically, the pool is not gated. There is nothing enclosing the pool, and so children slip in and they drown and die. This is a very common thing, and it's unfortunate. It's very unfortunate. AJ would testify that he saw his sister leaning over the pool. He would also testify that she was attempting to scoop out bugs from the pool in anticipation of Amanda letting the children swim in the pool once she was done with laundry. So as I said, I started looking into this because I ran across a clip of little AJ testifying. He was the prosecution's leading witness against his mother. He was 6 years old at the time that the state alleged that he witnessed his mother drown his sister. He would go on to be 7 when he would testify in an open court against his mother. Now, when I initially saw this video, I thought that he was terrified of his mother. I think most people see that and they think, oh God, because at one part in the video, the prosecutor says, do you see anybody in this room that is familiar? And AJ is on the stand and he is only 7 years old, cute as a button, so sad. Prosecutor says, do you see anybody that's familiar? And poor little AJ says no. And the prosecutor says, are you sure? You know that woman right there? And he points out his mother, Amanda. And AJ completely breaks down. I mean, he is hysterical. Okay? But I want you to pay attention too to the fact that the judge had formed some type of bond with this child, because the judge reaches over and says, AJ, don't start. He gets him in line from crying. It's crazy. It's crazy. So, in my opinion, that was not a child that was scared of his mother. This is a child that has extreme pressure on him to say things that should have never been said. I just want to be clear that this poor child should have never been put in this position. Second of all, he changed his story 14 times. He had contradicting statements the entire statement. Every time they would pull him in for questioning, he would be talking about stuff at the same time that took place at different times. No 7-year-old, 6-year-old, no child of that age should be testifying in a case like this. The amount of pressure that was put on that poor boy's shoulders is horrific, okay? So, poor Adriana is flown to the hospital. She passes away. Amanda is inconsolable. She would have been on the way to the hospital with Adriana, at which time AJ was picked up by Chuck and Brenda. Now, Chuck and Brenda is Amanda's mother, elderly mother, and Chuck is the husband of Brenda. Chuck and Amanda have a very tumultuous past, because Chuck had actually sexually assaulted Amanda years prior. And Amanda had went to her mother, Brenda, and told her, hey, Chuck is a pervert and he sexually assaulted me. And Brenda, of course, took the side of the pervert. And, I also had this happen to me with my own mother. The amount of distrust that this creates in a family dynamic is unbelievable. When your mother betrays you in that manner and does not defend your honor as her child, it is one of the most hurting things that a daughter could go through, to have her mother pick a man who was a pervert over their child. The dynamic in this family was toxic as hell to start with. So after her death, AJ was picked up by Chuck, who was Amanda's mom's husband. He was trash. Chuck was a known pervert. He actually constantly would still come on to Amanda, who refused to have a sexual conversation with him, much less an actual sexual situation. Chuck had already sexually assaulted Amanda, and Amanda had told her mother, but her mom stayed. Brenda didn't believe Amanda, which led to the stress in the family. This was supposed to be a step parent, and it was weird to Amanda. Amanda always felt uncomfortable around Chuck because he always made sexual advances. Amanda also knew he hated her guts because she refused to sleep with him. What do I always say about people that don't get the reaction that they want from you? They'll try to destroy you. Especially if you already have dirt on them. You know, like a sexual assault that you could go press charges for. So Chuck, the pervert, always had, Amanda would say, there was always extreme tension and anger from Chuck towards her. And Chuck wanted her locked up so she couldn't lock him up. Now, I believe every word of this because I know how these things work. Been there, done that. When you've lived it, it makes a lot more sense, and common sense goes a long freaking way in this case. So AJ is picked up by Chuck and Brenda. Brenda said that Chuck actually took AJ off for an hour by himself. At which time, Brenda and Chuck bring AJ to the police station. And they're like, listen here, detectives, you're not going to believe what this little boy has to say he witnessed. So AJ would start off telling investigators several stories before he got to half of the story. And then by the time court came, the other half of the story was found. But even when they got AJ up on the witness stand, he was still, when they asked him if he knew the difference between a truth and a lie, he said no. So here we have a child who does not know the difference between a lie and the truth. One time he said he did, the next time he said he didn't. This is the problem. Not only that, given the circumstances of Chuck hating Amanda so much, it is my belief that he coerced this young child into saying these things. And the evidence supports that. We're going to go over the evidence. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So, the medical examiner at the hospital, his name is Charles Siegman. He's been disbarred now. His license has been yanked, and every autopsy he's done, which was over like 900, they're having to go back and look at all of those autopsies now because he was a crook, he was corrupt, he covered up murders that happened. It's wild. We'll talk about that at the end. A lot of information on this case. A lot. So, Chuck and Brenda take AJ down. The medical examiner at the same, or days prior, I think it was like 24 hours prior, the medical examiner determined that this was an accidental drowning. The autopsy revealed that this was an accidental drowning. 2 days later, Amanda is pulled in for questioning. They want her to complete a polygraph test because 24 hours after they declared this a drowning, Brenda and Chuck show up with little baby AJ, and AJ's story changed 14 times. It even changed during the actual testimony on the stand in open court. You can go find it on YouTube. Amanda is then brought in around 48 hours after she lost her daughter. And good afternoon, everybody. He didn't even recognize the mom. Yeah, she had changed a lot. I agree. She had changed a lot. You know, stress will kill you. So, Amanda's brought in for a polygraph test. She is completely compliant. She doesn't even understand why this is going on. She just lost her daughter. And she passed with flying colors. She passed the polygraph with flying colors. It was ruled a drowning, and the medical examiner said nothing in the autopsy concluded that this was a homicide drowning, and that is actually what the original autopsy says. I seen it myself. Not only that, the original autopsy report does not note any bruising around the face. Interesting how misinformation. It's crazy. And once again, even if there would have been bruising around her face, it could have came from CPR and life-saving measures when they were trying to rip her out of the pool. At this point, prosecutors actually offered Amanda 10 years, a 10-year plea deal. Amanda has stood on ground since she was convicted of crimes that she did not commit. She stood on ground, and she has never, ever said anything but that she was innocent. The state offered her a 10-year deal, and she refused because she was innocent. I'm sure Amanda didn't understand that she was going to prison. Being innocent, you're always waiting for everyone to open their eyes. You're waiting for a judge to speak up and say that the prosecutors got it wrong, or that the case is dismissed because of a lack of evidence. That never happened. She would have her son testify against her and be sentenced to life for the murder of her daughter. And she was, and she's still sitting in there. So here's what the state does, and I've tried to explain this before. When the state does not think that they're going to be able to win a case, that is when they swoop in with a plea deal or an Alford plea. The Alford plea is my favorite, because that's literally them admitting they fucked up and they're too far in the hole and they just can't admit that they're wrong. An Alford plea is a red flag for an innocent person. They offered her a 10-year prison deal, and she refused. And so what was on the table? The death penalty and life without the chance of parole. She would end up receiving life without the chance of parole. But there are millions of people out here fighting for her to be freed, because this is crazy. So we're going to talk about the evidence a little bit. Continuing what I was just reading, being accused of crimes you didn't do is a shocking out-of-body experience. You can see it play out like you're a witness to your own life in movie form. You're watching it and it's unbelievable. You feel so alone, hurt, destroyed, and confused. You know you're innocent, and you also know that there's nothing you can do to change the situation. You're stuck in a state of shock, and this can create PTSD. Speaking from experience, you know. So let's talk about some of the circumstantial evidence. Amanda was dry when the cops got there. If she would have been squabbling with her child, as AJ tried to say, AJ, her son, would get on the stand and say that he witnessed his mother holding his sister underwater, but also these statements were so contradictory. One minute he says that his sister was making noise. The next minute he says that his mother had the hand over his sister's mouth. This does not make sense. If his mother was forcefully holding the child's face underwater, there would have been no screaming going on. Also, if Adriana was 47 inches tall and over 60 pounds, that's not an infant. That's not going to be easy to drown. Amanda would have been fighting forcefully with her daughter to hold her underwater, to kill her. When investigators got to the scene, not only were her clothes dry, but her hair was dry too. Also, the area around the pool had no water spillage over. If this woman was leaning over this pool trying to drown her kid in a plastic inflatable pool, if you've ever been in one of those, you know when you lean up on it, honey, the water comes pouring down the damn side of it. There was no water on the ground. There was no indication of a struggle. On top of that, Amanda had no physical marks to her. Let me tell you something. A lot of perverts that kidnap little girls and then assault them, we're able to convict them usually based on scratches or marks on the face, neck, and arms and hands. Victims usually will fight for their life if they're being drowned or strangled, or, there was no indication that a struggle had taken place at this residence in the backyard where the pool was. None. And we're going to talk about how nasty this house was. If you think I don't know, I know. The pool, she had pulled Adriana out of the pool and was attempting CPR when EMS pulled up. She was not soaked like we would see from a struggle. If she had drowned this baby, water would have been everywhere. The ground on her, but the scene was empty of a struggle. Amanda, from phone records, was on the phone at the time that Adriana drowned. She wasn't drowning her kid and holding a phone conversation with her boyfriend Alan at the same time. That's another thing. She had literally 2 minutes earlier put the phone down and ran outside looking for the kids, and that's when she found Adriana. Those 2 minutes were what the prosecution alleged. In that 2 minutes, she was out there fighting with her kid, holding her kid's head underwater. It's crazy. It's just crazy. Also, there was zero history of abuse in the home. There had been no prior CPS investigations. No prior cops had ever visited the home. There was no reports of neglect or harm. Not even a hospital visit was noted. What a horrible mother. Making sure her kids are healthy. Adriana's teachers testified that Amanda was a loving, caring, and attentive parent and was heavily involved in Adriana's schoolwork and grades and sought help for Adriana's behavioral problems on her own with no assistance from any agencies. What did I say? She was the only one that was an active participant in caring about her kids. And in court, they said that Adriana had ADHD, which led to all of these behavioral problems, but there's so much more to it than that I want to really break down psychologically, dealing with psychology. Adriana had ADHD, autism, and a neurodevelopment disorder. That neurodevelopment disorder can come from abuse. It can come from not bonding with a parent. Amanda herself testified to the fact, well, it was a co-worker that testified that Amanda had made statements that she was not, her and Adriana, her child, had a horrible, tumultuous relationship because she had never bonded with Adriana. This is called maternal deprivation. And it is when a child is ignored by a parent, or in Amanda's case, Amanda was in the military. So Amanda didn't have the time to bond with her child because she had to go back to freaking work for the government. It's really sad. We see this a lot. And it messes a child up for life. It can cause reactive attachment disorder, amongst other things. It can cause all of these damn things. I'm sorry, y'all. Borderline personality disorder. This is like a maternal social problem. A lot of these problems that Adriana was having, in my opinion, was stemming from the lack of bond with her mother, okay? But when they get to this point that they're threatening to kill their siblings, or they're spraying Windex on the TV, or they're writing on your car with a Sharpie calling you a loser, when it gets to this point, this is when professionals need to step in. And this is what I tell y'all: if y'all have children exhibiting these types of behavioral problems, you need to see a specialist. It seems like Amanda was so overworked, so busy with the kids, busy with a new relationship. She had so much on her plate. It seems like she was doing the best that she could, but these behavioral problems in the home had stressed her out to a point that she admitted in open court. And that's another thing. The way that this woman took accountability on the stand, and society still wants to destroy her. First of all, she took more accountability than most motherfuckers will ever. She openly admitted in court she was in over her head. She openly admitted that she disciplined the kids. She openly admitted that she spanked the kids. She openly admitted that she didn't know how to deal with these behavioral problems. She openly admitted that she went and looked for help, and there didn't seem to be much out there for a struggling mother like herself. She went above and beyond being honest. Now, let me tell y'all something. A lot of y'all are like, oh God, she spanked her kids. You're cute. You're cute, honey. Let me tell you something. In the 80s and 90s, we was all getting whacked upside the head by our fucking parents. That's actually what the teacher would tell you to do. And CPS in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. They used corporal punishment themselves. The government, the education system used corporal punishment to discipline children in schools, in foster families. And that's what they used to advise parents to do. The switch came probably, I would say, about the late 80s, early 90s. That's when they started saying, oh, well, and not even that, because my parents beat the hell out of me until 96 when I was taken. So this is what they advised to do, was discipline, time out, maybe a light spanking. Okay, this is just the way that the world was. I have no doubt that Brenda did the same thing to Amanda, the grandmother. It's just crazy that this woman got up there and said, yeah, this is what I did. I was wrong. I now realize that it probably made things worse. And she also admitted that she had an anger problem. It's crazy. It's just crazy to me how she was so forthcoming and honest and took accountability, and they used all of that against her to make her out to be this mother that drowned her child. There's no evidence to support that she drowned this child. Not one lick of evidence to support that she drowned this child. Nothing. The statement of a 6-year-old who was more than likely, in my opinion, coaxed by a pedophile to say these things to lock this woman up. Because Lord forbid if she's on the street and gets a wild hair up her ass and wants to go to the police and tell the police that Chuck raped her, that could be bad for Chuck and Brenda. You know, her mother, the wife, the mother of Amanda, that could be bad for both of them. It's really sick that it went this far, that nobody in the prosecution office decided to use some common sense. I mean, the medical examiner said that this child drowned by accidental drowning. It was only when a 6-year-old showed up with the grandparents at the police station that Amanda, 24 hours, would be in handcuffs. I just need to be clear about the timeline. So, AJ testified his sister was standing, leaning over the pool. And then he also testified that Amanda picked her up and tossed her in the pool. Amanda was on the phone with Alan and told him that the kids were begging to get in the pool, but she was busy doing laundry. They were eager to play in the water, and Amanda was on the phone with Alan doing laundry. There was a wagon that she would have stood on. AJ said that Adriana pulled the wagon to the pool, climbed onto it to get into the pool to scoop out bugs. Now, once again, this poor child's statement has changed 14 times. And even in open court when he was testifying, it was actively changing. Also, it was ruled an accident, and then 48 hours she was charged with murder and child abuse. There's conflicting statements, and I couldn't get a clear picture of the wagon situation. The cops never took prints of footprints found inside of the wagon. One of the kids had been standing in this wagon. The cops failed to secure the scene. They didn't do a proper investigation. There was evidence that could have been collected, but never was. Amanda had made statements to co-workers. Let's talk about this, because this was one of the things on the stand that she took accountability for. She had said, so Adriana had found a marker, and Adriana had drew on the seats loser, okay? She had wrote all over Amanda's car, and Amanda was pissed. Where's my vape? Y'all. Oh, it was in my lap. It was in my lap. I knew I had it. Amanda was pissed. Amanda gets to work and she starts venting to co-workers. Be careful, y'all. You can't vent to nobody nowadays. Even when you're upset, they'll take you the wrong way and they'll manipulate it and twist it, and you got to be careful what you say. Okay, you're not allowed to vent anymore. She said, I could just kill her. I could just kill her, because she had wrote in the car. She said this to co-workers. She said, oh my God, Adriana wrote all in my car and I could just kill her. My mama used to tell me all the time she wished she never had me. She used to tell me that I was worthless and wasn't worth shit, and I'm pretty sure there's probably times she threatened to kill me. I'm still alive, but did you die? But did you die? I just think that parents, when it comes to these cases, one minute people are like, oh my God, poor parents, they have so much on them, it's so hard to raise kids in this economy. And then shit like this goes down and they prosecute them on something they said, when if that was your fucking car and your child had done that, you'd be saying the same shit. What if that was your Land Rover or your fucking Escalade leather? You'd be saying the same thing. You'd be like, oh my God, I'm gonna fucking snap and kill this little brat today. Man, come on. Most parents have said some crazy off-the-wall shit, even if it was in confidence to their spouse. Most parents get to that point where they're ready to strangle themselves, okay? It's just crazy that this poor woman was prosecuted off of something that was said, and she admitted she said it. She gets up on the stand and she said, yeah, I said it. And this is how I said it. And she even rewords it the way that she exactly said it. And I think that we need to look at the fact that not only was she like extremely forthcoming, but she took accountability like we've never seen actual child killers do. You know, like Lori Vallow or the other woman I showed you. They didn't take no accountability. They didn't even take the stand. You know what I mean? Like, common sense, y'all. Let's use it. Let's use it. So Amanda had made statements to co-workers. This is the evidence. I just want to be clear that this was the evidence that convicted her. Everything we're going over right now is what they convicted her on. Amanda had made statements to co-workers. I could just kill her, referring to Adriana. She was a single struggling mom at the time. Also, Adriana had extreme behavioral issues and ADHD. Amanda shouldn't have said that, but my mom said it to me and I'm still alive. Amanda is open that she never bonded with Adriana. It's sad because Adriana's behavioral issues were putting extra pressure on the whole family, and Amanda admits to spanking the kids at times back then. And back then, that's what people did. Amanda was so forthcoming on the stand. She admits she wasn't a great parent. She admits to more faults than most parents would. And she testified and she was honest. They tried to twist her words and make her out to be unstable because she vented to some co-workers about the damage of her personal property. Now let's talk about something that could be viewed as actual evidence, and that was the state of this nasty ass home. Neglect is a form of abuse. The house was disgusting. Specifically, Adriana's room and AJ's room. They shared a room together, and because of the so I initially thought that the bedwetting was a sign of sexual abuse in Adriana. However, when I found out that she had neurological issues, that explains why she was wetting the bed. Bedwetting is one of the main side effects of a neurological issue. Hold on one second. Her room was disgusting. Her room was absolutely disgusting. And apparently, Amanda said that she would have to go in there and change the sheets every so often because Adriana would pee in the bed. It was said that the room smelled of urine. And I had wrote in here, in my opinion, she had been a victim of sexual abuse. Bedwetting at 7 is a sign of sexual trauma. And then I went back and wrote, I'm wrong. This came from her neurodevelopment issues. The house was said to have been a mess, but lots of moms and dads have messy ass houses. It doesn't make them a murderer. And once again, when you're thinking about how much this poor woman had on her plate, listen, I know people that don't have nothing on their plate. They sit at home all day, soaking up benefits, and their houses are disgusting. Roaches and old trash everywhere. I'm not saying it's right, but I am saying that also, this was not even brought up until after she was charged. So if it smelled so bad, why didn't the cops initially say something? Why did they wait until she's going to trial to turn this into an issue? I think that it was blown out of proportion. I don't doubt that it probably smelled like urine in there. But these things get blown out of proportion when it comes to CPS and prosecutors. I mean, unfortunately, I can't go back there and see. Now, there was another piece of evidence that convicted this woman was the lack of toys in the home. First of all, I saw evidence photos. There was bikes, there was wagons. I saw other toys in the yard. Listen, not every parent feels necessary to fill every room of the house full of damn toys. Not every parent has the money to do that either. There was a lack of toys in the home. Amanda said some had been tossed as punishment, and she said some were in a shed, and investigators would find out that that was a lie. Now, whether or not she forgot she donated them or whether she was trying to, here's the thing though. Let me tell you something, because I went through this personally. When you've got 10 investigators standing around you and they're telling you that you're going to jail for murder, okay, you can't think. That's what they're hoping on, though. They're trying to confuse you. They want to discombobulate you. They want to knock you off your toes. And it's preposterous to think that this woman And I said, not every parent can afford to fill every room with toys. I think this one is one of the dumbest pieces of evidence in this trial. So there wasn't enough toys in the home, so she didn't love her kids. I mean, it's crazy. And once again, we don't know what was going on in this home. For all we know, Adriana was trying to kill her siblings with these toys. We do know that she was destructing property, spraying Windex on electronics. The child needed a higher level of care. If Amanda did anything wrong, it was that she neglected to notice that her daughter needed a higher level of care. We don't know. All we know is what has been testified to, and it appears that Adriana was completely out of control. So another piece of evidence that was not released at trial that should have been was that there was a 14-year-old boy in the home the day of this murder. Amanda's 14-year-old stepson, Alan Jr., was in the home this afternoon too. He would have heard this, right? Too many people. I don't know too many people that would kill their own child in front of two kids and the neighbors. But she was convicted. And which, by the way, why was AJ the only one, allegedly, that heard the screams of Adriana as Amanda was drowning her in the pool? There was neighbors in the area. And why didn't Alan Jr. hear this commotion? So, that's the evidence. That's it. That's all the evidence that convicted this woman. And really, all of this other stuff that was circumstantial, without this eyewitness testimony of her own son, this would have never even went through. It's crazy. So let's talk about Dr. Seigberg. This was the medical examiner who is now being disbarred, disqualified, dishonored in the medical industry. He absolutely refused to testify at Amanda's trial. First, this was ruled an accident. Then, AJ's grandparents brought him into the police station. Then, Amanda passes a polygraph. Then, Amanda is arrested. So, the state has to make sure to concoct a story. They need a medical examiner to, back their theory. He refused. He actually did a voice recording and sent it into the courtroom. Very weird. Let's talk about him. Because it wasn't too long after he was... What's the word? I wonder what the word is. What to call it. I don't know. Dishonored? So it looks like he was the Bay County medical examiner, Dr. Charles Siebert. Seibert. Listen, he covered up the death of Michael Neeson by ruling that he suffered injuries in a car accident and not in a beating by officers. So here we have a victim who was beat by cops, and the medical examiner says that he suffered injuries in a car accident, trying to cover up the fact that these officers had murdered this guy. Interesting. Another woman, Frances Terry, claims that this doctor botched an autopsy when her daughter and husband died in September 2004 tornado. The autopsy report of the daughter, Donna Faye Reed, was signed by this doctor and said that the, quote, prostate gland and test are unremarkable, organs that belong to men. The autopsy of Reed's father, James Terry, failed to mention major scars on his body that were obvious. So it looks like he's not putting information in these autopsies that should be linked in the autopsies. It seems like he doesn't know how to do his job. Quote, the Grady Judd, y'all know Grady, Sheriff Grady. Sheriff Grady Judd said, quote, he was less than complete, less than thorough. There should have been no stone left unturned, and there was. Charles is already scheduled to leave the government-appointed post at the end of this month, long before the administrative hearing would take place. The State Medical Examiners Commission voted unanimously today to remove Dr. Charles F. Sagbert Jr. as medical examiner of Bay County. So they removed him the same year that this was 2007. This was in June of 2007. Hold on. Amanda was convicted. What month? Because it was 2007, honey. This is wild. Go to the top. It doesn't tell me. What month was Amanda Lewis convicted in 2007? September. How? Maybe that's why he didn't testify. Maybe that's why he didn't testify. Y'all, this is wild. So if you don't get what I'm on here, the Medical Board of Commissioners had voted unanimously to remove him from medical examiner in Bay County. This was June 14th of 2007. Amanda was prosecuted in September of 2007. This is the same medical examiner that ruled it an accidental homicide and then went back on his word and said some other shit that she could have drowned the child. The panel cited concerns about the honesty of the doctor who conducted the first autopsy of Martin Lee Anderson, the Panama teen who died after being roughed up at a boot camp. I bet that's why he didn't testify at her trial, because the defense would have ripped him apart. They would have been like, so, we heard that you were just disbarred, just unanimously, removed by the medical commissioner's office. The medical examiner who ruled that a teenager kicked and struck by boot camp guards died of a blood disorder is being accused of another family of covering up an alleged 1977 beating by police officers. So this is multiple cases. I think I read over 900 autopsies had to be reinvestigated because of this one medical examiner. And it just so happens that he was Amanda's medical examiner on her case. So, given the circumstances of this medical examiner being dishonored, I just think that she should have the right to an appeal. I mean, it's past that. I wanted to talk about something else that I learned about while investigating this poor woman who had her children stolen. And here's the thing. I really believe that poor little AJ, he broke down on the stand because he knew he was telling a lie. He knew that what he was doing was wrong. I find it very interesting that Brenda, Amanda's mother, and Chuck cared so much about little AJ. They adopted him, right? You would think that they would adopt him after Amanda went to jail, right? No, they didn't. They left him to foster care. You care so much about your grandson that you leave him to the foster care system? Now, AJ was adopted out. He's been with the same family for years, and he still claims that he stands on his word. It's so sad to see a child be turned away from their mother like that over a stupid false prosecution's case. I mean, this child has been coerced and conditioned and brainwashed since he was 6 years old, in my opinion. The snowball basis effect is what I want to talk about, because this is exactly what happened in Amanda's case, and it's exactly what happened in my case, and I'm lucky learning about her case that I'm even free. It's a phenomena where bases increase as irrelevant information is integrated and influences other pieces of information. So it's literally like a snowball effect. One piece of misinformation leads to other people talking about misinformation, which leads to a different storyline. It's like the human form of telephone. Y'all remember that game where we would play telephone in class? It's the human form of telephone when it comes to legal matters and other matters. This can lead to an accumulation of errors and ultimately affect the final outcome of one basis influence to the next. So, oh, it was 700. 700 autopsies had to be reviewed because of that one dishonest medical examiner. 700. And Amanda's was one of those cases. Ironically, at the same time, he was being disbarred from the medical industry. I don't know how his opinion even mattered at that point. She was prosecuted in September. He was disbarred in June. Why are we even taking his opinion? And as I said, nurses testified to the fact that there were no marks on Adriana's face. So where that even come from, where this supposed handprint come from, it's all a fucking lie. It's all lie. That's I don't know if it's the public that has created this illusion that this is why she was prosecuted, but there was no marks on her face. And even if there was, that is not enough to convict a mother of murder when those injuries could have been sustained from CPR and life-saving measures. That poor baby passed over 10 hands before she even made it to the hospital. And everybody was working on that child, trying to bring her back to life. It's not a pretty matter when CPR is going down. It's very vicious, and you have to be precise, you know? It's just really sad that most people believe that there was this handprint of bruises on this child's face, and there was not. Misinformation. And I think there's a lot of people that want to bash this woman because she didn't have toys, or Adriana wet the bed. Like, first of all, she was in over her head, and it's very clear that she was looking for help and there was no one there to help her. This is a system problem, you know. She was not, I don't know. I think that too many people that don't have kids have too much input, and also people that have resources that have children have too much input. You don't know what it's like when you're at the social, like the bottom, the lower tier of society, and she was clearly struggling, super struggling. Hey, Emily, what was I about to look up? I forgot. So this snowball basis effect happens a lot in a court of law, especially with caseworkers, social workers. For those that don't know, they have just as much power as police. They can call the police and have you fucking arrested. But they do. They have just as much of authority and power in open court as a police officer would have. And so anything these social workers say becomes kind of like set in stone. Like, you can have a social worker slap you in the face, and then you can go to open court and tell the judge, that woman hit me in my home. The court's not going to give a fuck. There's nothing they're going to do for you. Nothing. The judge will never believe you. And if the social worker says that you hit her, it's a wrap. They're going to take your kids. You're going to be charged with assault. And that's all it takes is one little fuck you, and your life is destroyed at the drop of a hat. It's really crazy how much power, and my phone's not working. It's really crazy how much power these social workers and government officials have. I don't think that most people realize this, but that's why I'm talking about it constantly. So this snowball basis effect is where one social worker and another social worker would start conversing about a topic, and then one social worker would take what the other one said as truth, and then she goes runs her mouth to someone else, and before you know it, a whole scheme, a whole lie, a whole story, a fairy tale has been created in an agency. And that's exactly what happened to Amanda. This was ruled an accidental death. And once again, the leading cause of death in Florida at the time was drowning in children. And even AJ says that he saw his sister leaning over the pool. I saw a psychologist give commentary on this situation, and he said that he thought that AJ was telling the truth, but that AJ witnessed his mother pulling Adriana out of the pool and giving Adriana CPR, he thought that AJ got things confused and mixed backwards. I don't think that's the truth at all. I think Chuck and Brenda absolutely coaxed this young boy into saying these things, and they put extreme pressure on him to do so, because as soon as the trial were over, guess where Chuck and Brenda were? Not with AJ. They dumped him like a bad fucking habit, like he was a problem. Left him to the foster care system. Let's not forget that Chuck raped Amanda, sexually assaulted her. And Amanda went to her mother, Brenda, and said, listen, your husband's a weirdo. This is what he did. And Brenda took Chuck's side. And Chuck kept pestering Amanda, like kept bothering her. And I'm sure Amanda, who had no resources, the only person she had was her shitty-ass mother and her shitty-ass mother's husband. I'm sure Amanda felt like her back was against a rock in a hard place, because she kind of depended on Brenda to sometimes help with AJ, and she needed that resource. And Amanda also is not the most intellectually inclined person. I'm sure she did not realize that the probability of her daughter being molested by Chuck was significant, like significantly high. Fun fact about pedophiles: if he was attracted to Amanda, he would have been 10 times more attracted to her daughter, because that's how they work. That perversion never ends, and it'll actually, the pervert will actually enjoy the offspring of their past victims even more. Psychologically speaking, they are drawn. It's almost like they are drawn even more to the smaller version of a past victim. So like, it's so common in family like settings for a grandfather to mess with his granddaughter, and then when she has a daughter, he's obsessed with his great-great-granddaughter in the same way, but it's 10 times stronger because it's the offspring. It's weird, it's disgusting, and I'm sure that Amanda was not aware that she was actually putting her children in danger by allowing them to be around this pedophile. Some people are they just don't know. And it sounds like she was really busy with being a nurse or some sort of the medical field, raising these children, and also trying to get Adriana help for her behavioral issues. Snowball basis refers to for the potential for systematic error in research when using snowball sampling. Hold on one second. Effect. Y'all know exactly what I'm looking for, and it won't give me it. Basis is not only cascading from one stage to another, but the basis increases as irrelevant information from one variety source isn't integrated and influences each other. So it's pretty much a snowball of slippery lies that builds a story that is untrue. And this happens so much in the justice system. So much. And it's one of the things that convicted her, because once again, this was ruled an accident, and then it trickled down into something else that was not even slightly true. I agree that she was not the best mother, but she was a mother that actually needed tremendous help, and everyone turned their back on her. And Amanda had already been through absolute torture as it was. Her upbringing was horrible. Brenda was not a good mother, and then Chuck's over here being a weirdo. Amanda's firstborn son, David, tragically passed away at 6 months old due to a seizure disorder. Now, this information was released to jurors, but under weird context. You know what I mean? Almost like she had killed a child and got by with it before. The way that they word stuff in a court of law is enough to leave so much doubt in a juror's mind. I did not hear them say that David died from a seizure disorder, but I went and found out that David actually died from a seizure disorder. So it wasn't like this poor woman had murdered her son. Prior to David's death, Amanda sought medical attention for him multiple times due to concerns about his health. But her concerns unfortunately were dismissed by medical professionals. So here we have a history of Amanda going to seek help for her son and medical professionals turning their back on her. And weeks later, he would die from this seizure disorder that could have been called at the hospital, and medicine could have been implicated into his, body. So like they could have gave him medicine and it could have prevented potentially his death. The circumstances surrounding David's death were deeply distressing for Amanda, compounded by the emotional impact of losing a child and the lack of validation for her concerns for his medical issues before the tragic incident. The knowledge of David's death became known to many potential jurors during Amanda's trial, particularly in the small town setting where the trial took place. This information likely influenced perceptions and judgments, potentially leading to some jurors to draw unjustified concerns or basis in their assessments of Amanda's guilt. So what this is saying is because this information was released, it looked bad on her, even though there was a medical reason how David died, and it was seizures. Let's talk about the prosecutors creating a friendship with a 6-year-old boy, because first of all, this is a conflict of interest. This is wrong. The relationship between prosecutor Larry Bassford and AJ was characterized by multiple meetings and interactions prior to the trial. This was the prosecutor, the lead prosecutor, but also the judge had private meetings with little AJ, because the judge, if you notice in the video of AJ testifying, the judge actually says, AJ, and tries to get him to calm down, and AJ immediately stops crying. So that tells me for the judge to be able to lean over and tap on a desk and tell a child to stop crying, and that child does, tells me that they have some sort of relationship behind closed doors. Common sense goes a long way. Bassford met with AJ on several occasions before the trial, including a visit to Adriana's grave to encourage AJ to discuss the incident. Although Amanda and her defense attorney, Walter Smith, were unaware of these meetings, the full nature and extent of these interactions were not disclosed to them. They took him to that grave to manipulate him, in my opinion. In February of 2024, Prosecutor Bassfield revealed that he encouraged AJ again at a local restaurant during AJ's high school years. Oh, wow. So even after the case, this prosecutor is over here having some kind of relationship with this small child. This ongoing relationship raises questions about the nature of the influence and the familiarity between the prosecutor and a key witness in the case. Keep telling the same story, AJ. We know what you saw. We know you don't know what you saw, but we remember what you saw. Brenda testified against Amanda due to the influence and beliefs of her husband, Chuck, who had a strained relationship with Amanda. Chuck's prior sexual assault on Amanda may have shaped Brenda's perspective. Absolutely. Absolutely. And let me tell you something. If that sick bitch would pick a man over her child, she's going to continue to pick him, which means that she's willing to defend him even if she knows he's wrong. However, since the trial concluded, Brenda has had a change of heart and now believes that Amanda is innocent. You sick bitch, you go jump off a bridge, Brenda. That's what you can do. A tall one, a very tall one. You leave your daughter out to rot and testify against her at the most vulnerable time in her life after she just lost a child and she's about to lose her son. People are fucking sick, y'all. The testimony of Dr. Sieberts autopsy report raises significant concerns due to the lack of direct involvement and expertise from individuals presenting the findings. Dr. Charles did not attend the trial, leaving his interim replacement, Dr. Andrea Minyard, and administrative assistant Lisa Ruckman to testify on his behalf. And there's also a voice recording. What a bitch. Ruckman, who lacked medical qualifications, had merely attended the autopsy and was convicted of perjury in a prior case. So here we have all of the medical examiners disqualified, dishonored, and going to jail. This absence of an authoritative voice from the original examiner raises doubts about the reliability and accuracy of the autopsy report interpretation presented in court. The autopsy report indicated some vaginal abrasions on Andrea, which was interpreted as signs of sexual assault. Let me tell you something. I read the autopsy. Those abrasions on her vagina actually came from a catheter. There was a nurse who testified, and she's one of the people that said there was no marks on this child's face. She had to completely disrobe Andrea so that they could look at the back of her and the front of her and her whole body and make sure there was no other wounds. At this time, she noticed a mark on her shoulder, but that was probably about it. That's what she said. She says that was it. She said she did not notice any abrasions on her face, any bruising on her face, and she says that she went to insert the catheter and it did not go well, and those are what those abrasions are from. However, interviews and medical records established that these abrasions were caused by a catheter inserted into Andrea's arrival at Bay Medical Hospital in Panama City, Florida. Medical professionals confirmed this information, clarifying the abrasions were not indicative of sexual assault, but rather a procedural result during medical care. This evidence dispels misconceptions about the nature of the abrasions documented in the autopsy report. It's crazy. This is crazy. We should not be having this kind of miscommunication over a catheter insertion. Now they're like, oh, this baby's been assaulted. No, you dumbasses, y'all did this. Y'all did this. But they don't want to admit that a lot, because then that means that they're incompetent and they shouldn't be working in a hospital. So they'd rather blame the parents and say some horrendous act has fucking happened because they're incompetent. It's crazy. All of this should have never even seen a courtroom. So AJ, who is now 23 years of age and resides in Florida, despite his belief in his mother's guilt, AJ maintains a stance of openness and support for the investigations aimed at seeking justice and understanding the circumstances of Adriana's passing. First of all, I do believe that this child probably has no idea what happened that day. He was at the age where, in my opinion, it's unlikely that he remembers. But when she's set free one day and it's proven that this was all to frame her, I hope that AJ comes around and tells his side of the story, because it is my belief that Chuck and Brenda and the Sheriff's Department, Prosecution Office, and CPS all coaxed him to be the hero of this story. Then he was passed over to foster parents who believe the state story, because that's what the government says. So they've probably embedded in him over the years that his mother is a bad woman and she's behind bars as well. He still claims that this is his story and he's sticking to it. I really hope that there comes, when Amanda is freed, because there's people out here, millions of people fighting for her freedom. When Amanda is freed, I hope that he comes clean about how he was coerced, because it would open millions of people's eyes into the power of CPS, prosecution, and cops. This is what we need. We need a child to step up and say, yes, this is what they did to me. It's really sad. And Amanda is still in prison. Like I said, they tried to give her the death penalty. Hold on one second. Dr. Charles Siebert performed Adriana's autopsy, was not presented at the trial. Dr. Charles was a medical examiner appointed by Governor Jeb Bush in Florida. Dr. Charles faced significant scrutiny after a high-profile case involving the death of a teenager at a police-run boot camp. Initially attributing the death to sickle cell, it was later discovered to be the result of a beating by officers. During the investigation, Dr. Charles was found to have corresponded with Bay County Sheriff Frank McKeithen. Moreover, he had a history of failing to adhere to basic autopsy procedures. Consequently, in 2007, the Florida State Medical Examiners Commission unanimously decided to remove Dr. Charles from his position following the revocation of his medical examiner license. Dr. Charles transitioned into a children's... He's a clown that sings and dances at children's parties now. He transitioned to running a children's entertainment company. Crazy. AJ's initial interview with police was marred by several critical issues that compromised its reliability and validity. Firstly, the interview was conducted without the presence of Child Protective Services, which is essential for ensuring a neutral and child-centered environment during such sensitive discussions. Furthermore, the presence of AJ's grandmother, Brenda, and stepfather, Chuck, in addition to 2 police officers, likely exerted undue influence on AJ to please the adults in the room, potentially shaping his responses. Chuck's pre-existing negative views or suspicions about Amanda could have further pressured AJ into providing statements that align with those perceptions. So the medical examiner was a crook. Some other people in his office went to jail. It's crazy. And once again, before closing, look at this face. Look how she's just smiling because she just killed her kids. And look at this face. You know, smiling, screaming, angry because she killed her kids. And then look at Amanda. I mean, I just think that people really need to open up their eyes. Look at the bags under her eyes from the stress. It's just crazy. I mean, it's just so sad. And, you know, AJ's life has been irreversibly affected by losing his sister and then his mother. I'm not saying that Amanda was a perfect mother, but she was in over her head, extremely struggling with no resources, and her own family despised her. Her mother, Brenda, didn't like her because Chuck wanted to bang her, and he already had. And Brenda and Chuck were terrified that Amanda was going to actually do something about the sexual assault that had taken place. They were terrified. It's crazy. I mean, it's my belief that they set this woman up. They set this woman up. That's my belief. And I think that there's too much, there's way too much evidence to support a drowning as opposed to a murder. It's just crazy. And I know some people are like, oh, well, why didn't she just stand up? Listen, a lot of kids drown in mud puddles, honey. Why didn't they fucking stand up? I don't know. We don't know. Kids die every day in inches of fucking water. And they're 50 fucking inches tall. It's like, why didn't they stand up? We don't know, okay? We don't know. But there's no evidence to support a murder. None. Not even this child's statement. First of all, this child's statement should have never been allowed in as evidence because he changed that statement 14 times. Not only that, you can find all of these videos on YouTube. His statements are not coherent, consistent statements. He's talking about witnessing planes in the sky and parachuters falling out of the sky and shit. And then 5 minutes later, or 2 minutes later, he'll say, yeah, and I saw mommy dunk Adriana in the pool. As I said, there's been clinical psychologists that have assessed this situation, and they do believe that he got confused with Adriana being pulled out of the pool as opposed to being held in the pool. He himself even said that Adriana had pulled the wagon over to the pool and that she was leaning over the pool. That was his initial statement. So from his initial statement, it sounds like Adriana was being defiant because Amanda had told them that they could not swim right now. She was on the phone with her boyfriend, Alan. Alan's son was there, who was 14. She told them they could not swim. It sounds like Adriana was being impatient. She pulled the wagon beside the pool. She was trying to, AJ's statement says that she was trying to scoop bugs out. At one point, Amanda said something like that too, that Adriana would do that. She would try to scoop the bugs out of the pool. It sounds like an accidental drowning. And that is what the autopsy shows. That's what the evidence shows. And it's just really crazy that Amanda has been in prison for almost 20 years when she had her life destroyed. She needed resources. It's not like she was out here smoking crack, honey. She was out here working in the medical field. She had just got out of the military. She was doing the best that she could with 2 children. And technically, even though she had a boyfriend, Alan, technically she's still a single mom. They had only been together for like 2.5, 3 years. It's not his financial responsibility to take on the responsibility of these kids. You get what I'm saying? So like, technically, she's still a single mom. And it was not easy dealing with a child that had the neurodevelopmental issues that Adriana did. Her statement saying, oh my God, I could just kill her. Parents have said that since the beginning of time. My parents used to tell me they were going to kill me a lot. They never did. It was said out of frustration, and I think that it's crazy that there's so many parents out here that want to act like they're holier than thou, that would not say the same shit if they caught their 6-year-old scribbling on the damn hood of their Chevrolet. You would be pissed, and you would probably say the same shit. I think I will be more concerned if you're not pissed. Then I'm going to say you're an unfit parent, because, you know what I mean? Like, why wouldn't you be pissed when your child just destroyed personal property that's going to cost thousands of dollars to fix? I would be more concerned that you're not pissed. I'm going to be like, oh, what in the gentle parenting is going on here? You're going to raise a psychopath. Please keep it on. I got to download. I'm updating already. First update. Yeah, it's a really sad story. So if you want to support Amanda, AmandaLewis.com, they have a whole website set up for her. It's called FreeAmandaLewis.com. If you're interested in where I got some of this information, it's actually the timeline and everything we just talked about is right there. That's some information. Also, you can go through Estill County, Florida, and pull public records through them. It was actually fairly easy. And then there's a ton of stuff. I just want to tell you where I referenced all this from. Dr. Grande, Law and Crime, pretty much any old documentary. There was one through like the History Channel or somebody. That might have been like Forensic Files or something. Not Forensic Files, but you know what I mean, like through that channel. What is that channel called? Anyways, there's tons of stuff. So she was actually convicted of first-degree murder, or was it second degree? It was child abuse. They tried to give her the death penalty. Yeah, first-degree murder and aggravated child abuse. She was actually up for the death penalty over this. The jury found her guilty in 2 hours. This is a first-degree murder trial. We don't get guilty verdicts in 2 hours, homie. Maybe 2 days, but not 2 hours. It's almost like the jury was preconditioned for a guilty verdict. It's one of the most disturbing cases, and I feel so bad that she is still stuck in there, because there's no evidence to support that she done this, and I truly believe that she's innocent. It's sad. Oh, it's a deep one, ain't it? Deep one. Yeah, and you can see that answer with Weed Boo. You can see that on YouTube. The nurse that actually inserted the catheter, when they brought Andrea in to Bay Medical, they stripped her down. This nurse, the first responding nurse in the ER at Bay Medical. They stripped her down. She talks about the procedure for, why they do this. They need to make sure there's no other wounds. And she talks about how they went to put the catheter in. And she is asked on the stand, this is on YouTube, she is asked on the stand if she noticed any bruising on the child's face. And she says no. And here's the thing. I don't care if that child had a black chest with fingerprints all around her face. That is something that we would see with somebody who's getting CPR. Because let me explain this. This child, we would have been beating the hell out of that little baby's chest, trying to get to her heart, to get it pumping. This is how ribs and chest bones get broke. I mean, people's whole chest thing has been broken before. I don't know what that's called. What's it called? Anybody know? And also from grabbing to give CPR. When your adrenaline is rushing, honey, you're not going to be mindful about what you're doing, okay? When your adrenaline is rushing, you grabbing and you doing, honey, okay? So these medical professionals and Amanda that was trying to get the water out of Adriana's lungs and mouth and throat, it would have been a forceful action that could have led to bruising of the child's face, because people's adrenaline are running as they are trying to save lives. Even if there was bruising on her chest or face, it would have been consistent with CPR and not a child being held underwater when the autopsy had already revealed that the cause of death was an accidental drowning. This is not about Amanda killing her daughter. This is about Amanda snitching on a pervert. Chuck and Brenda did not like her. Imagine your own mama not liking you because your mama got with a pervert and you told your mama that this pervert raped you. I think people need to use common sense. That's all I'm saying. They need to use common sense. AJ made no prior statements to EMS workers, cops, or anyone at the scene. It was only after he was taken by Brenda and Chuck for hours. And one or more hours he spent alone with Chuck. How fucking terrifying. I just think people need to use common sense. I understand that the government wants to tell you that this woman drowned her kid because her 6-year-old son said she drowned her kid. But some people, we got to think outside the box and look at the actual evidence. And there's no evidence to support that this woman murdered her child. None. Zero. A pissy ass mattress doesn't mean that she was damn intentionally killing her daughter. It's crazy. It's like, I've seen some horrendous home conditions, okay? I've talked about this before. I had an aunt that had children, and they lived in squalor. Rats, roaches, pissy ass cats pissing everywhere. It smelled like urine as soon as you walked in the door. CPS would come out there. They'd open up an investigation. They'd demand for her to clean her house. She'd clean her house. They'd close the investigation. And then 6 months later, they'd be back when the house was a mess again. Because the kids would go to school smelling like cat urine. And it was so bad, that she constantly had CPS at her door. So, under the grounds that Amanda was convicted of murder, don't you think that my aunt should have been convicted of child neglect and abuse for allowing those conditions? Why didn't CPS do anything to her? Why did they let families like that go under the radar, have 20 different open investigations in an 18-year period of time, and nobody blinks a fucking eye? But Amanda Lewis goes to social services to get help with her disabled daughter, and they don't want to help her. They only want to interject themselves when her son says that she murdered her daughter. It's crazy. The system is so ass backwards. So ass backwards. Amanda Lewis needs to be freed. Please visit freeamandalewis.com. I don't think that AJ was scared of his mother. I think he broke down because he knew what he was doing was wrong. He knew he was lying. And there's actually more evidence to support that he pushed his sister in the pool than there is that Amanda drowned her. Crazy but true. Crazy but true. His own statements were so contradictory that, and I don't know if I'm saying that right, but you know what I mean. He kept contradicting himself to the point that his own statements could have been used against him, because he talks about his sister being on the wagon and how she was leaning over the pool. Now, whether he pushed her or not, it doesn't matter. I mean, it kind of does, but you know what I mean. I don't think he did. I think that Adriana was being impatient. She knew her mother was on the phone doing laundry in the house, thinking that her mother was unassuming of her situation. She went to play in the pool, fell over in it, and somehow could not get out and drown. Now, whether she hit her head, that is a potential. That was actually one of the possible causes of how she drowned in the first place. But also, this is why we don't leave children around water, because accidents do happen. It does not matter if they can stand up. It does not matter if they know how to swim. Children that know how to swim drowned every fucking day in this country. It's like people think that, oh, well, she was tall enough, she could have stand up. Listen, there's been children that have drowned in mud puddles, honey. It's really sad. I hope that she's freed soon. She's one of the other people. Derek Chauvin, Amanda Lewis. There's so many innocent people in jail right now that have been completely railroaded. And Amanda's case is one of those. It's called the snowball basis effect. And it's a compilation of lies that have accumulated to create a picture that is false. It's disturbing. Well, I'm going to run, you guys. I'm going to run. I needed to talk about her because I've been studying her for a few days now, and it's just disturbing. Seeing the medical examiner's report, and knowing that doctor has been, disbarred. The fact he didn't show up for court, it all creates a picture. If you have common sense, then you know exactly what was going on. Apparently, at the same time she was being prosecuted, he had just been disbarred. How do you get disbarred in June? And then in September, you're supposed to testify in this murder trial. You don't even show up. You send some of your workers to do it for you. And then it's found out that they committed perjury. They go to jail. I mean, at this point, I don't know why she has not had a retrial. All of her, she's exhausted all of her appeals. They're not trying to give her an appeal. And I'm sitting here like, why? Like, if anybody qualifies for one, it should be her, based on the grounds that the medical examiner has been proved to be an unethical, morally bankrupt professional. I don't know. It does not help that her son, said this shit. I just, I think he's so far gone that he'll never tell the truth. His adoptive family and this prosecutor that is his friend that hangs out with him, apparently, the lead prosecutor, Larry, and AJ have a very close relationship. Now, if you know what I know, then you know why. Larry can't take the chance of AJ remembering anything that could put him in trouble. That's why he keeps seeing the victim. 100%, that is my belief. I'm allowed to have that opinion. Larry knows that Amanda is innocent. I mean, unless he's a complete fucking fool. But anyone that went to law school for that amount of years should know. Now, he might have not knew till the last moment or years later after Amanda was in jail. I don't know. I don't know. But you either are blatantly lying or you're incompetent. There's no middle ground. Either you know she's innocent and you unfairly prosecuted her and locked her up for crimes she didn't commit, or you're just completely incompetent and you're so dumb you don't need to be working in a court of law because you can't tell an innocent person from a guilty one. There's no in between there. So I don't know if he knew. I would assume probably yes. He, and that's why he stays close to AJ. And AJ is not going to do anything that goes against his life. Like, those are his parents now, and this is all he's ever known. This child has been conditioned since 7 years old, and before that, he was 6. So, I don't know how many of y'all has a clear memory from 6 years old. I mainly just remember the bad memories. So, I don't know. I think that if Amanda is freed, that AJ would come out and tell the truth. I do. But unless she's freed, I don't see that happening because he's been so brainwashed. In my opinion, he did not cry because he was terrified of his mother. He cried because he knew what he was doing was wrong. And that's exactly why the judge reaches over and says, AJ, AJ, to get him in line so he wouldn't cry. I don't know how people don't see shit for what it is. I watch those videos and I see completely different than what other people. Maybe that's because I've lived through what I've lived through. And I've been in Amanda's shoes. Maybe it's because I have the power of intuition. I can see through the bullshit. It's a very sad case. And Amanda needs to be freed. Amanda needs to be freed. She's done more than enough time for not having toys, for not cleaning up the house as society feels. You know, it's crazy because I wish everybody else's house that has an opinion was under a fucking microscope. I want to see what their houses look like. You know what I mean? So I think she's done more than enough time for not having toys and for having a pissy bedroom. You know, she's done more than enough time. 20 years is more than enough time for those offenses. It's crazy. It's crazy case. Crazy case. And I'm going to run, you guys. I hope that y'all have a good day. Thank you, Answers with Weeboo. I agree. And that's what I'm trying to explain to the people that want to say that this child had bruises. If she did, they more than likely came from CPR, because it's not a pretty sight. If you've ever seen it, it's not a pretty sight. I've seen nurses, like, literally, I saw this one nurse. They had this man rolling on a bed. There was 2 bitches behind it running, and there was another nurse that come out of a fucking hallway, hopped up on the gurney, and just started beating this son of a bitch in the chest. And the other nurse is back there with a little pumpy thing on the mouth. I said, holy shit. I mean, it looked like these bitches were wrangling cows in the fucking emergency room. They were doing this so fast. I mean, if you've never seen medical professionals in actual action, they have tons of videos on YouTube you can go see. It's not a pretty sight when they're trying to save lives. They have to be forceful. Their adrenaline is rushing, and they're terrified. To watch that nurse that was trying to put the catheter and Andrea talk about that situation, she is still disturbed. She was on the stand trying not to let out tears. This put so much pressure on so many fucking people, and it was wrong. The nurses, the doctors, the good medical examiners, this put too much pressure on people that should have never been put in a situation to testify against a woman that was innocent to start with. It's crazy. I love you guys, and I hope y'all have a good day, and definitely support Amanda if you see anything about her, because this shit can happen to anybody, and it's been happening since before the government was the government, and it'll continue to happen. But the one way we can prevent it is to talk about it and address the actual evidence of these fucking cases. Just because her kids or her daughter had behavioral problems and there was not a lot. There was toys in the home. Let me be clear. There was toys in the home, just not as many as you typically see. I just don't think that is grounds to have somebody prosecuted. But anyways, I love you guys, and we'll talk later, and y'all be safe today. Bye, y'all.